Well, we are all patiently awaiting any kind of news on Season 5 of Young Justice. We haven't gotten any updates yet, but Greg Weisman has been pretty steady revealing additional characters that live on Earth-16, and we found 2 of them that are pretty interesting and have an amazing history in both Marvel and DC Comics, not to mention Saturday morning cartoons. So let's take a couple minutes to talk about what Greg revealed, which characters these are, and why they kind of hold a special place for me. Now, before we dive into all that though, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and ring that bell for all the updates. We want to be your place for all the Marvel, DC, and Young Justice news, but we want to make sure we're bringing it to you truthfully and transparently so you're actually in the know. Well, we are still in that holding pattern, awaiting James Gunn to finally make an announcement about the future of the DCU, which should give us an idea if Young Justice has a place on this future roadmap. Now, in the meantime, Greg Weisman is still very active on his Ask Greg site, as well as filling up the roster of characters for Earth-16. If you've been paying attention to his Twitter, he's been pretty much numbering and naming characters for several weeks, and although many of them are pretty interesting, 2 recently really caught my mind. Now, in one of his updates, he actually names 2 superhuman characters that we technically haven't seen in action on the show. Let's check it out. That's right, that's Dynomutt and Blue Falcon. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Dynomutt and Blue Falcon, that's perfectly okay. They actually have their origin going way back to 1976 in the Scooby-Doo Dynomutt Hour, where both Dynomutt and Blue Falcon made their premiere appearances. Now, the series itself was just a lot of fun, especially for the 1970s, and saw Radley Crown, voiced by Gary Owens, and its mechanical dog Dynomutt, who was voiced by Frank Megatron Welker. Now, they worked out of Big City, and had their own version of the Batcave called the Falcon's Lair. The show was very similar to the 60s Batman series, seeing the first 10 minutes end with a cliffhanger, and then in the second half of the show, the team recovering and doing their superheroing. The show was kind of fun, but very reminiscent of childhood cartoons of the mid-1970s. Now, the characters did get their own spin-off in 77 called The Blue Falcon and Dynomutt, which had 4 episodes and were even a big part of Laugh Olympics. Both characters have had a life, interestingly, in both Marvel and DC Comics. First getting their own comic book in Marvel in 1977 to 1978, but then more recently returning to DC in the Super Sons Dynomutt #1 back in May of 2018. They also got a big feature in the recent movie Scoob, where once again they were teamed up with Scooby-Doo and crew, but this was a new incarnation of really all the characters, but still a lot of fun. Now, we have actually been teased with these characters on the show, and technically they did appear. There was a birthday party several years ago where you saw several of the children hanging out. In one of those frames, you see Aquaman's son holding a comic, and on the cover of that comic is Dynomutt and Blue Falcon. Now, whether this means Greg intends on making these characters appear in the upcoming years, I really don't know. If you're watching this character count, it's up to almost 800. And obviously he does a really great job of cramming as many characters as he can onto the screen, but I don't really see a storyline for Dynomutt and Blue Falcon showing up anytime soon, but I would absolutely welcome it. One of the interesting things I find about Blue Falcon and Dynomutt being mentioned by Greg Weisman is the attachment to Scooby-Doo. If you've watched some of our other videos on the adjacent material and interesting cameos that have appeared in the show, one of them was actually in the WWE movie featuring Scooby-Doo. During the final showdown in that Scooby-Doo movie, it's being televised on WWE, and while giving some audience responses, you actually see 4 members of the Young Justice team. Cassie, Artemis, Zatanna, and Miss Martian are all watching the show, suggesting the possibilities that Scooby-Doo and the Young Justice team could actually exist in the same universe. Now, what other characters Greg could potentially introduce in Season 5, we'll have to wait and see. I just thought this one was a bit of fun, and given their long history in both Marvel, DC, and Saturday morning cartoons, they are one of the most unique pairings out there in all of comics. I'm curious if you have any history with Dynomutt and Blue Falcon.